Lin was a bit puzzled. She was just an ordinary rural girl. Although her father sacrificed his life for saving people and gave her the opportunity to work as a salesperson in the town supply and marketing cooperative, she didn't have much more than the little girl in the same village. How could she have become a naturally hot search physique? Oh, this hot search is a word she learned from a dream in her coma. Whether it's a man or a woman, how can anything involve her, or maybe it's because of her. Fortunately, after a coma, she changed her fiancé and came back. Although this fiancé didn't quite meet her aesthetic preferences, after all, thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a Chinese-style face are popular nowadays. Her fiancé was not bad-looking, but she looked like a male version of a fox spirit. At least it was pleasing to the eye, so she just made do with it. Otherwise, what else could she do? If she dared to withdraw, her mother, like Lin Daiyu, could drown her with tears. It's just that this fiancé is not a worry-free person either. Compared to what she has, this troublemaker's physique is unbearable. Let's take a look at it, the annoying couple. I can't afford to provoke or hide. Take the college entrance exam to do scientific research and serve the motherland. Keywords of the novel. I eat melons and watch TV shows without pop-ups in the era novel. I eat melons and watch TV shows in the era novel. Download the complete set of TXT in the era novel, and read the latest chapters in the era novel. Chapter 1. Initiation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 1 Initiation. On the 15th day of the 7th lunar month, the production brigade on the cliff of Liugo Commune in Hongdu County, Izhou City, Haidai Province, was in chaos in the scorching sun. The only daughter of Li Guodong, a barefoot doctor who had previously saved a high-ranking official of the Commune Party, fell into the river and is still unconscious. The time that was supposed to be spent working underground is now all blocked inside and outside Li Guodong's courtyard. The branch secretary, director, deputy director, and female accountant of the brigade are all sitting in the hall. The courtyard is filled with members, whispering and the sobbing sound of Li Guodong's wife, making the branch secretary Li Guoyang very irritable. Crying at this time is useless. Looking at the young man standing on the side soaked all over, Li Guoyang looked at Li Guodong's wife with some helplessness and said, "Guodong's wife, don't cry for now. Although it's hot now, we can't let Xiao Feng wait here so wet all the time. Let's go change clothes first." Third brother, I. Watching her sobbing and speechless, Li Guoyang frowned and said with a suppressed breath, "I don't still have Guodong's old clothes at home. Let's talk about other things first." Lu Yuan, also known as Li Guodong's wife, stood up weakly and went inside. She found a patched black pants and a 70% new blue single coat, and walked straight to Feng Yingjie without saying a word. She just reached out and handed the clothes to him. Watching Li Guoyang nod with a bitter smile, Feng Yingjie took the clothes from Lu Yuan's hand and, accompanied by the team accountant, went to the room where Lu Yuan was looking for clothes just now and changed into clothes. Looking at Feng Yingjie, who had changed his clothes, Li Guoyang took out a dry tobacco bag from behind his waist, lit it, and took a few puffs before slowly saying, "The doctor just said that the big girl is fine, and she will wake up around the night. Let's talk about it now. What should we do about this?" As soon as Li Guoyang finished speaking, Lu Yuan's sobbing voice also turned into a crying voice. This voice made Li Guoyang restless and he met Li Aigua's gaze. He took a deep breath of the anger that was pressing in his heart and said coldly, "Don't cry, daughter. In law of Guodong. Let's talk about what you want to do first." Me, I don't know, third brother, second uncle, what do you think we should do?" Facing Lu Yuan's swollen and red eyes, Li Aigua sighed helplessly. He had no interest in this distant niece and daughter. In law at all. He just looked at Feng Yingjie and asked calmly, "What do Comrade Xiao Feng think should be done about this? What should we do? Cold salad. Isn't he just brave enough to save people from the river? How did this become the current situation?" Feng Yingjie knew that rural people were conservative, but he was in a hurry and took power. He watched people drown and couldn't do it, so he saved them. Alright, let's get into trouble. In the hot summer, people don't wear many clothes, and Li Lin, a little girl, can be considered average in her attire. However, she can't stand it. She's soaked all over in the river. In order to save her, she didn't have too many worries. She rescued her, cleaned up the foreign objects in her mouth and nose, let her lie on her knees, and controlled the water. It's inevitable that there would be physical contact, but it's related to a human life. He never expected that things would end up like this. Now let him say something. The girl vomited water and briefly regained consciousness, even thanking him. But the girl fell into the water at the east end of the village, where all the members and workers had to pass by. Watching him save people, they all gathered around, and then things became like this. What did he say? How to say it? What do the secretary and team leader think should be done about this? Whether it was Li Aigua or Li Guoyang, they were immediately speechless. Comrade Xiaofeng bravely saved his own niece and granddaughter, and they couldn't do the same. However, in the current situation, if the girl is not allowed to marry Feng Yingjie, Li Lin's reputation will be ruined. Although they also know the principle of urgency and power, both Li Aigua and Li Guoyang in the countryside know that this place is full of rumors. Li Lin was hugged and hugged by people, and in the summer, her clothes were thin and wet with water. If it weren't for Comrade Feng's careful consideration in holding Li Lin in his arms, there would have been so many people on site at that time, and no matter what the reason was, they wouldn't have been exposed. Let those broken-mouthed women keep talking so much, it will completely tarnish their reputation. Guodong's daughter. Law is not someone who can handle this matter. The two of them have to make the decision and look at each other. Li Guoyang glanced at Lu Yuan and said to Feng Yingjie, Comrade Xiaofeng, thank you for saving our daughter Lin. But now that this situation has arrived, I want to ask you if you have an engagement. No, Feng Yingjie looked at the crowd in the yard with some frustration, then at a few people in the room and shook his head as he watched Li Guoyang. He really wants to have an engagement now, just thinking about his mother's judgment and favoritism, he couldn't help but shiver. It's not as good as Li Lin, a little girl from the countryside. At least this little girl in the team has a good reputation. Li Guoyang suppressed the smile in his eyes and glanced at Li Aigua, who was equally satisfied. He looked at Feng Yingjie with some anticipation and said, look at this now. Comrade Xiaofeng, you should have heard of my niece. She has an outstanding appearance and can read and write. Comrade Xiaofeng has been in the brigade for almost a year now, and he knows some things about the situation in the brigade. If you don't want to, my niece may be. Secretary, stop talking. How should you handle the matter? I'll listen to you. Feng Yingjie pondered for a while, took a deep breath, and interrupted Li Guoyang's words. He said with some determination. He came from Beijing to the countryside, although he didn't know anything, 2 years was enough to make him understand that the local customs were both simple and fierce. Even when he reaches someone else's territory, he has to handle it honestly. Although he is a father who doesn't love his mother, at least he grew up with his grandfather who has been working in revolution for a lifetime. Whether it's political consciousness or assessing the situation, even if he has been exposed to it, he understands that now people have to bow their heads under the roof. Besides, it is said that the little girl Li Lin is also good. Although he has no plans to get married, in this situation now, it is not a big deal to give up marriage. It happens to block his mother's heart of using him to climb the camp. It's really impossible to treat him as a fool. He has not seen any ghosts and snakes behind his grandfather. Although he was trying to save the little girl Li Lin, he hugged and hugged her now. If he really didn't marry that little girl, his whole life would be ruined. These 3 aunties and 6 grandmothers in the countryside don't know what rumors can spread yet. That's it. A little girl from the countryside, no matter what, he can still hold her back. Feng Yingjie's thoughts are very beautiful now, but he never thought that he could indeed hold on to the little girl. It's just that he couldn't hold on to the little girl, but rather that he willingly was held in the palm of his hand by her. Even though he was laughed at openly or secretly in the future, he never changed. Being held in his hand by the little girl for a lifetime, he was still willing. End of this chapter. Chapter 2. Wake Up. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 2. Wake Up. Both Li Aigua and Li Guoyang have a sharp and decisive personality. With Feng Yingjie's permission, they directly confirmed Feng Yingjie's engagement with Li Lin and engaged 3 days later. The matchmaker was the captain's wife, Li Guoyang, and Li Guodong's distant aunt, and Li Lin's distant second grandmother. Seeing that the matter had already been settled, Li Guoyang didn't want to look at Lu Yuan's tearful face and said angrily to her, "Take good care of Miss Lin. You don't have to work today. After work, I'll have your third sister-in-law come and personally talk to Miss Lin." As Li Guoyang finished speaking and left, Lu Yuan was taken aback for a moment. Before he could fully recover, Li Aigua also stood up and led the group away. Feng Yingjie, who had finally left, only said to her, "If my aunt has any requirements for engagement in 3 days, please let Secretary Li know. I will do whatever I can." After saying this, he left. Both inside and outside the courtyard, the crowd that had been squeezed slowly before almost all dispersed with a loud cry, leaving only Lu Yuan standing in the hall, stunned. When he regained his senses, he went directly to the west side of the inner room, where Li Lin's bedroom was guarding his own daughter. When Li Lin woke up, the sun had already set. However, in the long daylight of summer, the sun had already set and the sky was still bright. Li Lin, who had been unconscious in bed for a whole day, slowly opened her eyes and stared at her mother guarding the bed, stunned. Looking at the bumpy walls and mosquito nets on top of her head, Li Lin took a long time to recover from a big dream. Whether the dream was true or false, looking at her mother guarding the bed, Li Lin's heart was filled with sourness. In the dream, her mother passed away because she and her father had passed away one after another and had not lived for a few years. In the end, it was the educated youth who rescued her from the river today and several distant cousins from the village who bid farewell to her mother. Regardless of whether the dream was true or false, Li Lin took note of this feeling. She only looked at her mother's uncontrollable tears on her face, feeling a bit headache. When could her mother's temperament, which was comparable to Lin Daiyu's tears in the wind, change? "Mom, I'm fine now. Don't worry, don't cry." Helplessly, Li Lin spoke out first to comfort her mother. She was helpless about her mother's crying, and if her father was still alive, her mother wouldn't be like this. Although she often cried, Li Lin knew that it was all to scare her, and her father also loved her the most. But now it's different, her father is no longer here. Grasping Li Lin's hand with all his might, Lu Yuan choked up and said, "Mom, you're the only one left. You must be okay. If you have any unexpected circumstances, how should I explain to your father when he goes underground one day? You're your father's only bloodline." "Mom, don't worry, I'm fine. I'm fine, and I won't make it impossible for you to explain to Dad." Li Lin looked at her mother weakly and silently thought to herself, "This is my own mother. Otherwise, she might not be able to control her temper." Thanks to the scene in the dream, Li Lin is now eager to prove whether everything in the dream is true or not, but her mother's attitude and words make her almost unable to roast. She is not only the only blood of her father, but also the only blood of her mother. "Okay." Reaching out to support Li Lin and leaning against the bedside, Lu Yuan was also a daughter who knew her well. She looked gentle and shy, but in fact, her grandmother was an impatient person, and her father's stubbornness. After carefully examining her daughter's face, she whispered, "Your third uncle and second grandfather are in charge and have arranged your marriage with Xiao Feng. They will be engaged the day after tomorrow." "No, why was it settled? Comrade Feng saved my life, but now it's better to be directly blamed by our family. This is it." Although Li Lin dreamed about it, she had no anger in her dream before being rescued, and naturally didn't say anything about her engagement. However, after hearing her mother say these things, she still feels helpless and powerless. She was kind enough to save your life, but now she's better to be blamed directly. Lu Yuan looked at his daughter's disapproval on her face and retorted in a low voice, "Mom knows it's not good, but when she saved you, she also hugged and hugged you. What should you two do if you're not engaged? Even the broken-mouthed women in the team can be particular about being dead. Besides, you are illiterate and work as a salesperson in a supply and marketing cooperative. Don't you deserve to be a young man who goes to the countryside? Mom knows that Xiaofeng doesn't look like an ordinary child, but since he has already gone to the countryside, no matter what happened before, even if he marries you now, how can he still mistreat him?" Looking at her own mother's face full of arrogance towards her daughter, no one could match her. Li Lin felt a bit toothache. Her grandmother was no longer there, and her mother's father favored sons over daughters. Her mother was being calculated, whether unintentionally or intentionally, but in the end, she was left behind. My grandmother, also known as my mother's nanny, felt sorry for the young lady who was big on her own. Seeing that the situation was not right, she searched for a lot of things and went back to her hometown with her family. She publicly said that my mother was my father's little daughter. In law who had not yet passed by, and a maid who served the young lady in a wealthy family. My grandparents passed away one after another, and even my father passed away because of saving lives. They have been safe and sound all along. It is said that the young lady who used to play music, chess, calligraphy, painting, poetry, and wine has now been refined into an ordinary peasant woman. However, due to her mother's temperament, her grandmother took precautions and confessed everything to her only granddaughter before her death. After all, my own mother is not a big deal, while my father, to put it nicely, loves my mother very much, and to put it bluntly, fears my wife like a tiger. My mother said that the sun is square, and Li Lin couldn't doubt that my own father must have smiled and agreed, this sun is really beautiful. Pressing down the chaotic thoughts in her heart, Li Lin looked at her mother with swollen eyes and could only take a deep breath, saying, "Mom, let's not talk about this for now. Did my third uncle and second grandfather say anything?" I said, "You will be betrothed the day after tomorrow." Lu Yuan looked at her daughter puzzled. In fact, Lu Yuan was not named Lu Yuan, but Lu was the surname of Li Lin's grandmother. Yuan followed Li Lin's grandmother to the countryside, and the word Yuan actually matched the name of the girl Li Lin's grandmother used to serve. Lu Yuan was originally named Jiang Jiujin, the legitimate eldest daughter of the famous Jiang family in Haidai province before the founding of the People's Republic of China. Just now she has become an unknown ordinary peasant woman, but whether it's Li Lin or Jiang Jiujin or Lu Yuan, they all understand that being able to live and live safely now is already the result of the Li family, or rather, Li Lin's grandparents and father's desperate efforts. But no one expected such a kind family, and in the end, except for Li Lin, who had a Li family bloodline, there was only Lu Yuan, a daughter-in-law with a foreign surname, who left behind a bloodline for the Li family at least. Although Li Lin was a girl, she had not cut off her bloodline at all. In the future, when Li Lin got married, Lu Yuan was ready to discuss with her son-in-law and let a child surnamed Li inherit the Li family bloodline, so as not to add soil to her in-laws, her man, and her grave in the future. End of this chapter. Chapter 3. Marriage. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 3. Marriage. For her mother's answer, Li Lin was powerless and helpless. It has been many years now, and her mother is still so simple and innocent. Apart from rubbing her swollen and painful forehead while holding her father, she reached out and said, "Besides engagement, what else did second grandpa and third uncle say?" Since her father passed away because of saving someone, she has been supporting everything in the family. At that time, she had not yet woken up. The decision to make the engagement was definitely the intention of her second grandfather and third uncle. Li Lin knew that both the second grandfather and the third uncle were for her, and she took responsibility for this situation. However, as a life-saving benefactor, she was very innocent. Because of her kindness, she was saved and then betrayed. This is truly an unfounded disaster. Your second grandfather and third uncle didn't say anything. It was Comrade Xiaofeng who said that if there were any requirements, you could raise them and ask your third uncle's mother to pass on the message. Lu Yuan thought for a moment before saying. Li Lin looked at her own mother with indescribable words. Her mother was really spoiled by her grandparents and father, who were too innocent. However, her mother had already passed her 40s, and both her personality and values had already been established. Moreover, Li Lin was reluctant to let her change anything. After thinking for a while, she said softly, "Mom, it's time to get off work now. You can go find Uncle San and tell her I need her help. She's feeling weak now. If not, Li Lin will definitely personally come to find Li Guoyang's wife. After all, when asking for help, you always have an attitude of asking for help, right? No need, your third aunt will be designated to come and see you in person later. You can talk to her later." Lu Yuan's disapproval made Li Lin a little powerless to roast, but her mother's character. Forget it, she'd better keep it well, just like a naive mother who knows nothing about the world. If she really has an accident and leaves her mother alone, Li Lin feels that she is not willing to go to hell. Feeling quite helpless as she looked at her own mother, Li Lin thought for a moment and asked, "Mom, did you ask someone to help me go to the supply and marketing cooperative to ask for leave?" "Oh, take a leave. Mom forgot about it, but your second grandfather asked someone to explain the situation to the supply and marketing company and asked you to take a leave. Lin doesn't need to worry about these things. You need to rest well before going to work." Lu Yuan thought for a moment before saying, at that time, she only felt that the sky was falling and was worried about her daughter. Then she remembered whether her daughter went to work or not. Fortunately, the people in the village are not as good-tempered as Lu Yuan, especially the village secretary and team leader, who are all well-rounded. Moreover, because Li Guodong had a good social relationship before his death, and they were both brothers and nephews who did not wear 5 uniforms, he usually took good care of Lu Yuan and Li Lin's mother and daughter. When he knew that Li Lin was out of danger, Li Aigua asked his little grandson to go to the town supply and marketing cooperative to take leave for his granddaughter. It also prevents Li Lin from going to work in the future and causing dissatisfaction among the leaders. After all, this is the current environment, and Li Aigua, as the village secretary, still has these consciousnesses. Moreover, being a salesperson in a supply and marketing cooperative is so popular that everyone knows it. Li Lin breathed a sigh of relief and explained that the situation was good. Li Lin knew better than others about the supply and marketing agency where she worked. Everyone knew how popular it was to work as a salesperson in the agency. However, Li Lin saved someone because of her father and ended up taking her own life. In the end, this good fortune was reported to Li Lin, the only daughter. Otherwise, just relying on Li Lin as a rural girl, no matter how outstanding she is after graduating from high school, the job of a sales clerk in a supply and marketing cooperative would not be Li Lin's turn. Although Li Lin cherishes this job very much, thinking of her father, Li Lin loves and hates this job. If it weren't for her father, she wouldn't have this job, but this job was also earned by her father's life. All these thoughts were suppressed by Li Lin in her heart. Even Lu Yuan, the biological mother, did not know about Li Lin's thoughts. Moreover, Li Lin understood that having this job was a good choice for herself and her mother. Looking at Li Lin's pale face, Lu Yuan looked at the sky and said softly, "You're lying down for a while. It's getting late, Mom's cooking." "Okay, then I'll take a break." Li Lin felt a bit powerless, and she didn't show any courtesy to her mother. She nodded and with her help, she lay down again. Watching her mother disappear from the doorway, Li Lin let out a faint sigh and rubbed her forehead vigorously. She always felt that her drowning this morning was a bit strange. The river at the east end of the village was very deep in summer, and no one in the village knew how close she was. Even when crossing the river, she was very careful. Although she was taking a shortcut home this morning, she was also very careful. Moreover, she had already waded across the river and reached the shore, so how could she have fallen into the river without a single step? Besides, she has been in the water since childhood, and if it weren't for the sudden incident, she would have choked on the water and cramped her legs. She wouldn't need anyone else to save her, she could have climbed up on her own. Although she couldn't figure out what was going on, Lin felt something fishy. It was just that in her dream, she was not saved and ended up accidentally falling into the water. However, Lin always felt a bit strange when she fell into the water, especially when she felt pain in her calves. She reached out and touched her calves, then lifted her legs to look. Her gaze fell on the blue and purple patch on her calves, and she immediately squinted her eyes. She knew that the feeling at that time was correct. Gently pressing on this piece of blue and purple, there was a slight swelling and pain. The copper coin-sized blue and purple clearly indicated that she had been calculated to fall into the water this time. However, although her popularity in the village was not very good, she did not form any grudges. Whether it was her elders or peers, she did not socialize with the villagers frequently. Why did this person calculate her life? Lin has been in school all along and doesn't have much contact with her peers in the village. Who could hate her and directly take her life? This time, she was saved, and in her dream, she was also saved, but she never woke up again. Lin reached out to gently caress her heart, which was painful because of her anger beating too fast, and her face blushed slightly with anger. Most of the households in the village are Li, and there are few people with foreign surnames. Although the neighbors may be a bit dirty, they are not big enough to calculate the lives of others. Moreover, due to her father Li Guodong, their family's popularity in the village is quite good. After all, in this era of rural households, it is rare for them to go to the hospital due to discomfort or illness. Lin's father, Li Guodong, is a barefoot doctor in the village, and his medical skills may not be very advanced. However, he can treat any headache or bone fracture that the villagers may have. Moreover, because the villagers are not wealthy, her father tries his best to go up the mountain to collect herbs to help the villagers, and these villagers are also aware of it. For this reason, most people are very grateful to her father. As the only daughter of her father, Lin has also been favored in the village since childhood. Even because of her father, no one would hate her to the point of calculating her life, right? End of this chapter. Chapter 4. Mysteries. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 4 Mysteries. Lin has a quiet and unruly personality. Whether it's her elders in the village or her peers, she doesn't have any major conflicts with her. In fact, even small conflicts are almost non-existent. When she was young, Lin was raised by her mother and was a bit spoiled. She rarely ran around the village and played with the girls and kids in the village. At the age of 5 or 6, Lin went directly to school. Although she knew children of the same age as the village, she was not very familiar with them, let alone had any deep hatred towards anyone that could be calculated for her life. Just looking at the blue and purple on her calves, Lin squinted her eyes slightly. Obviously, there was a misunderstanding in her cognition. There was no such thing as deep hatred. This was the rhythm of wanting to kill her directly. No matter how much Lin thought about it, she couldn't figure out who the person wanted to kill her was. Although the people in the village couldn't be considered good people, they probably didn't have such a vicious person. They had a personal grudge against her, but Lin didn't get along with anyone even if she wanted to break her head. Who would have such a big malice towards her and want to directly kill her? Miss Lin, Miss Lin. Upon hearing the sound, Lin, who had regained her senses from contemplation, bent her lips and raised her voice, saying, "Sanbo Nyang, I'm inside." She then propped herself up and sat up. This voice sounded like the voice of Li Guoyang's wife, Lin's distant third uncle Nyang. "Are you feeling better?" Are you still feeling uncomfortable? Why are you so careless, you girl? Just let your brothers help you with any work. You're so lucky. You've been busy working in the field early in the morning, and I don't think your small body can withstand such a struggle, let alone going to work in a supply and marketing cooperative during the day. As soon as these three aunties entered the room, they watched as Lin struggled to get up and leaned against the bedside, muttering incessantly, "Why are you such a strong girl? Now there are only you and your mother at home, and your salary at work is enough to support both of you. What are you doing so hard to let your parents know? It's heartbreaking." Although Lin is a girl, in this patriarchal environment, she is not as undervalued as other families. The Li family is already weak, and even a girl is as affectionate as a pearl. Especially Lin's grandparents and father have been doting on and hurting since childhood. Not to mention working in the fields, even the household chores are reluctant to be touched by Lin. Lin has been obedient and sensible since childhood, unable to resist her grandparents and father, and has never worked in the fields at all. But for the household chores at home, Lin feels sorry for her grandmother and mother. Whether it's doing laundry, cooking, or cleaning, Lin has never been lazy. When she's not very old, she would fight behind her grandmother and mother, and when she's a little older, because her grandmother's health is not very good, Lin helped her mother learn all the household chores except for farm work. Firstly, Lin's grandparents passed away one after another. Last winter, Lin's father was gone again. In the past 6 months, Lin has grown rapidly. After all, her mother really can't support her family, she just wronged Lin. Sanbo Nyang looked at Lin, whose face was still a bit pale, and thought about many things in her heart. However, she couldn't help but sigh and said with some heartache, "They are all from the countryside, let alone your uncles and brothers. You don't need to be so skilled as a little girl. You are really good." "I'm fine now, I'm worried about Uncle Nyang. I just accidentally slipped and my legs suddenly cramped after falling into the river. Uncle Nyang, I'll be careful in the future, let Uncle San and the others not worry." Lin explained softly with a pursed mouth. Sanbo Nyang gave birth to 6 children in a fit of anger, but she didn't have a daughter. Although most people at this time tend to favor sons over daughters, especially in rural areas, because there is no shortage of children in the family, Sanbo Nyang has always been envious of having a daughter, especially Lin, because she followed her mother and looks so beautiful. Perhaps the third aunt also has some facial control. She treats Lin better than the nieces in her sister-in-law's family and her mother's nieces and nephews. Although she treats Lin as her own, she also cares for her shortcomings. "Are you really okay? Is there anything uncomfortable?" Sanbo Nyang reached out and gently pressed her hand against Lin's forehead. After feeling the temperature was normal, she still asked with some concern. Lin shook her head slightly, curled her lips and smiled lightly, saying, "It's okay. I just lay there all day, feeling a bit weak. Aunt, I heard my mom say before that it was Feng Jiqing from the educated youth who saved me. But aunt, they saved me with all their kindness. Isn't it a bit bad to be so clingy to them?" Lin knew that the third uncle of her team leader and the second grandfather of the village secretary were for her good, but this was really unfriendly to her educated youth. She saved her life with kindness, but was actually betrayed. What's going on? Moreover, Lin was well aware that she was just a rural girl, and she was not the same type of person as the educated youth from these big cities. The two of them, who were not from the right household, would definitely not work well together. Besides, that Feng educated youth, although not familiar with her, Lin had also heard of her. She was from the capital, and her family was said to be from the army, and she was also a considerable leader. Lin has always had self-awareness, and since ancient times, this has always been considered a perfect match. The two of them, who cannot be easily matched, together have no good results. Moreover, if others do not understand the principle of equality, Lin will not fail to understand these things. Alas, there's nothing we can do about it. The situation was a bit unpleasant at the time. If we don't book him for you, there might be a lot of gossip in the future. Comrade Xiaofeng is indeed not very compatible with you, but there was nothing we could do at that time. Your second grandfather and third uncle had no choice but to mistreat you. The reputation of this daughter's family matters. Sun Wenyang sighed and continued, fortunately, that little comrade looks pretty good, otherwise Li Lin girl would have suffered a big loss. Auntie. Li Lin looked at San Auntie with a mixture of tears and laughter, feeling a little helpless. Auntie, that Feng Jiqing grew up in the capital, and his family is said to have good conditions. I don't look down on myself either, but Auntie also knows that we rural people and these educated youth are not the same people. This marriage is an injustice to them. Miss Lin's words are worth mentioning. It's not him who's been wronged. Comrade Xiaofeng did come from the capital, but now it's a national policy for educated youth to go to the countryside. What's different from us rural people when we come to our countryside? It's hard to say something unpleasant. Can they still want to go back now? Sun Wenyang let out a snort. Although she didn't have much disgust towards these educated youth, she didn't have much affection for them. She was as delicate as the young masters and ladies she used to be. Not to mention, she couldn't do farm work, but the key was that she couldn't endure hardship. The life in this city is different from that in the countryside. These three aunties also understand that they didn't expect those educated youth to be as capable as the people in the countryside, but they couldn't do it. You have to learn, you have to be able to endure hardship. There is no work in the countryside that is not tiring or difficult. End of this chapter. Chapter 5. Shortage Protection. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 5 Shortage Protection. But these educated youth are doing well, slacking off and playing tricks one by one, not to mention, and constantly playing with those seemingly paradoxical things that seem to be on the top line. This has made San Bonyang very disgusted. Now there is a movement in the city, and San Bonyang is also aware of it. But that is in the city, rural people need to have the awareness of rural people. If you can't grow good food, you can fill your stomach with whatever you want, and what's the use of just shouting slogans? I still look down on the rural people and don't even think about it. If it weren't for these rural people, what would these city kids eat? But fortunately, those educated youth in the village have been here for at least a year or two now, and they didn't feel as sharp as when they first arrived. If it weren't for this, Uncle San wouldn't have agreed to let Li Lin and the educated youth be together. San Wenyang looked at Li Lin seriously and said, Miss Lin, Comrade Xiaofeng. If it were a different educated youth, Wenyang wouldn't agree to this marriage. Comrade Xiaofeng looks pretty good, and when he first arrived, he didn't look down on us rural people like others. He was also down to earth in his work. Although he wasn't very capable, his attitude was still good at least. Your third uncle and second grandfather have already made an agreement with Comrade Xiaofeng. 3 days later, the two of you will be engaged. I just heard your mother say that you are not very willing, and my aunt knows that you have been wronged. But at that time, there was no other way. Although he didn't want to be married now, his family is all in the capital, and she left her hometown alone. He is the only one here, and he is no different from his son-in-law who came to visit. Some people stared at their aunt in amazement. Li Lin was unable to roast. She was wronged. Isn't it Feng Jiqing who was wronged? However, Li Lin also knew that she couldn't explain this clearly to her own aunt. After all, in her heart, ordinary people really don't deserve Li Lin as a niece. After all, when Li Lin just graduated from high school, there were many people in the village who had ulterior motives towards her. Not to mention the people in the village, there were indeed quite a few who had ulterior motives towards Li Lin. Even the sister-in-law of San Wenyang's mother came to invite San Wenyang to propose marriage to her own son. It is said that these words were not heard by Li Lin's parents at that time, so San Wenyang refused. Sanbo Nyang despised her maternal nephew for not being worthy of Li Lin, who was not tall or good-looking. She had not yet graduated from junior high school and was not suitable for Li Lin everywhere. She told her maternal sister-in-law not to be a toad and want to eat swan meat. It is said that she was very angry with her maternal sister-in-law and went home to complain to her in-laws. As a result, Sanbo Nyang was even scolded by her maternal parents. However, Sanbo Nyang is a fair person, with a grand demeanor in her actions. Although she speaks quickly, she can also keep up with her words. She uses facts and reasoning to compare Li Lin and her nephew one by one, and her nephew is not compared to scum. This incident is not a small one. Anyway, people from all over the country know about it. That's why Li Lin is already 18 and hasn't been engaged yet. It's not that others don't like her, but rather that she dares not. After all, Li Lin's unattainable image has been established through the operation of Sanbunyang. It's also because at this age when it's common to get married in rural areas, Li Lin is already 18 years old and has not yet been engaged. After thinking for a moment, Li Lin looked at Sanboyang and said softly, "Auntie, I understand. I know both Sanboyang and second grandpa are for my own good, but I want to talk to Feng Jiqing. After all, engagement and marriage are big things in a lifetime. Auntie, I want to see if Feng Jiqing can entrust his life to him. Auntie also knows my mother's temperament, and I always have to take care of her for the rest of her life. Aunt also knows that whether it's in our countryside or in the city, it's usually my son who sets up a household to take care of the elderly and send them off. But my mother is just my daughter, and I'm sure she will come to take care of them. If the person I marry doesn't want to, Aunt, I won't leave my mother behind to get married." Upon hearing this, Sanbunyang pondered for a moment and said, "This is indeed a problem, but I think everyone in our 10 miles and 8 townships doesn't know about your family's situation. Comrade Feng has been here for almost a year, and he must also know. Since he agreed to the marriage, he must also understand. Aunt, regardless of whether he is clear or not, we must make this clear to him. Isn't it an engagement the day after tomorrow? I want to trouble Aunt to call someone over after dinner. Let's explain the situation face to face with a gong. If he is willing, then this marriage will be decided by Uncle San and Grandpa Air. If he is unwilling, we can't force it, can we? This is a good saying, forcing a fight is not sweet." Speaking of which, Li Lin looked at Sanbunyang and smiled, saying, "Bunyang, it's not that I can't marry your niece. If he doesn't want to, we can't rely on him either. After all, he saved my life, and we can't repay him with kindness, can we?" "What are you talking nonsense, girl? What kind of revenge? He doesn't even think about it. If it weren't for him saving your life, this marriage wouldn't have happened to him. Our Lin girl is a well-known good girl from all over the country, even the son of the commune secretary's family is not well matched, let alone a runaway educated youth. The son of the commune secretary's family, as mentioned by Sanbunyang, did indeed have a crush on Li Lin. Apart from anything else, he was good-looking. Not to mention, there were not many people in the surrounding areas who could find someone more beautiful than Li Lin. The son of the secretary's family had a crush on Li Lin. However, the commune secretary was very self-awareness. His son was not very good-looking and was spoiled by his mother and daughter-in-law. Although he is not a person of great treachery and evil, there is nothing serious about him. The young men in their 20s are lazy, wandering around the whole street. They have no appearance, no size, and no culture. The secretary of the commune personally said, "It's not a good match. That bastard and his family is not worthy of Li Lin. Li Lin needs to have a good appearance, a good physique, and a good culture. Not to mention that his gangster is not suitable, ordinary people of all sizes are not suitable. How could they match Li Lin perfectly? That's why, whether it's in the village or in the commune, not to mention the kids from the countryside, there are even a few arrogant male-educated youth who feel good about themselves, but unfortunately, Lin is at home after graduation and rarely goes out. Even if they want to hang out in front of Lin, they can't do it. Later on, when I went to work at the town supply and marketing cooperative, besides encountering or going to the cooperative on the road, it was not easy to see Lin. Besides, Lin's father was also a famous barefoot doctor, the village secretary, the team leader, and all of them were Lin's uncles and grandfathers who did not wear 5 uniforms. Almost no one would disturb Lin. This is also the reason why Lin, although well-known, has a great reputation. If it weren't for today's accident, neither Li Guoyang nor Li Aigua would have been willing to let Lin return a rural educated youth. After all, although Lin's father Li Guodong has gone, Lin, as the only root of Li Guodong in this world, neither the village nor their Li family could have protected Lin. After all, they all wanted to find a young man from a family with many brothers but a good appearance, good character, and culture who was willing to become a son-in-law in person. They would assign him to Lin and have a child named Li, so that Li Guodong could be considered a successor. End of this chapter. Chapter 6. Meeting. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 6 Meeting. However, no one expected that Lin would accidentally fall into the water and be saved by Fengjie. Moreover, the people in this big summer were already wearing thin clothes. In order to save Lin, they hugged and hugged each other. In this rural area, even spitting stars could drown people. Li Aigua and Li Guoyang could only make a quick decision and directly decide on their marriage. Upon hearing this, Lin looked at her own aunt. It was true that all women are good to others, and all children are good to her own. She knew she couldn't explain her own aunt, so she whispered softly and coquettishly, "Aunt, I don't even know Fengjie. Anyway, let me meet him first and talk to him, okay?" "Aunt." "Okay, okay. Let's meet first. After dinner, I'll personally go to the educated youth order and call someone to come home. It's okay to make things clear, after all, we'll have to support each other for a lifetime." The third aunt couldn't stand Lin's coquettishness the most. As long as Lin behaves coquettishly, Sanbo Nyang would hate to pick off the stars in the sky to make her happy. Sanbo Nyang has lived for most of her life. If it weren't for her strong personality and open-mindedness, her spiritual energy might have been worn away by the favoritism of the family before she married Li Guoyang and was still a girl in her mother's family. How can there be a good life now? At the beginning, many families of Li Guoyang brothers were very poor, and the parents of the third aunt were also brothers. However, they were unwilling to let their daughter-sisters marry such a poor boy. But the third aunt just identified Li Guoyang and forced him to die. Finally, she followed Li Guoyang to the current Yashang brigade in Yashang village with nothing. Fortunately, his mother-in-law's family has a kind character. Although Li Guoyang has a big temper, he really hurts, spoils, and feels guilty for his mother-in-law who has been accompanying her through hardships. Except for the affairs in the brigade, almost all family affairs are under the command of the third aunt. Now that the few young children in the family have started a family, and as they grow up, the third aunt can be considered to have endured all the hardships and willingly come to life. After talking to Lin for a while, although her face was still a bit pale, she was sure there was nothing uncomfortable. Then she prepared to go home for dinner. She just walked into the yard and looked at Lu Yuan coming out of the stove. She curled her lips and walked forward to say a few words. "Sisters, after dinner, I'll go call comrade Xiao Feng to come to our house. Do you have anything to say about this marriage? We'll explain it to everyone in front of each other." Lu Yuan nodded and said, "Then I'll trouble sister-in-law. I don't have any objections, I'll listen to Lin's people. Let's see what Lin says then." "Okay, then I'll go back first." Sanbo Nyang frowned at the words and tried to say something, but then held back. She just twitched her lips and finally let go of the words before turning and leaving. She didn't see the smile hidden in Li Lin's eyebrows, eyes, and soles as she stood up and walked towards the entrance of the hall. Every time Li Lin looks at her own mother and third uncle's mother together, she feels a mix of tears and laughter. Third uncle's mother despises her and doesn't want her, but no matter what, third uncle's mother always protects her, and whenever she encounters third uncle's mother, she is not online. With just one sentence, third uncle's mother can choke and be speechless. Looking at the slightly frail figure at the door, Lu Yuan couldn't move forward and reached out to grab his daughter's slightly warm hand. He breathed a sigh of relief and said, "When you get up, wash up. We'll have dinner later. Your aunt said she'll bring Comrade Xiaofeng to the house later." "Okay, I got it, Mom. Let me wash up first," Li Lin nodded and said gently. Although her mother is intelligent and quick-witted, her carefree nature is indeed quite worrying. However, over the years, Li Lin has also become accustomed to it. The two of them finished their simple dinner, and as soon as they finished tidying up, Li Lin heard the voice of San Bo Nyang. Knowing that someone was coming, Li Lin stood up and took out the tea leaves from home to brew a pot of tea. Looking up, she saw San Bo Nyang and a tall and handsome young man who intervened between the young man and the young man walking into the yard. Li Lin blinked her eyes, pursed her lips and smiled as she approached the visitor, whispering, "San Bo Nyang is here, and Feng Jiqing is also here. Sit down quickly." The summer night was not cool either. Li Lin sat directly on the stone bench under the grape tree in the yard, placing the tea in her hand on the stone table. She watched her mother take 4 cups and slightly curled her lips, and the 4 of them sat directly on the stone bench next to the table. "Don't be busy, it's not just outsiders. Miss Lin, please sit still." Uncle San's words made Li Lin, who was originally planning to pick some more grapes, sit still without getting up. Lu Yuan carefully looked at the young man sitting next to her. The young man who had shouted "Auntie" to her from the courtyard but had not spoken up was really too good looking. Lu Yuan was not very familiar with these educated youth in the village, and this comrade Feng was also unfamiliar. I had only encountered her from afar before, and this was the first time I had such close contact. Although I had encountered her in the morning, Lu Yuan was all focused on her daughter at that time. Although she was very grateful for her life-saving benefactor, she didn't have the heart to see if she looked good or not at that time. At first glance, this person looks a bit too good looking. Although compared to those men with thick eyebrows, big eyes, and a Chinese character face, the comrade Xiaofeng in front of him has sharp edges, delicate facial features, a full forehead, seductive ruefeng eyes, sharp and slender corners, a high nose bridge, red lips and white teeth, and a clean and handsome appearance. Although he looks too beautiful, his clean and thorough eyes are extremely comfortable to look at and easy to develop feelings for. When he entered the yard just now, Lu Yuan noticed that he had to be at least 1.8 meters tall, but his figure was thin and slender, giving people a feeling of not being exposed to the wind. However, when he walked towards him earlier, it made Lu Yuan feel like he had seen the words in the book about Bai Shilang, who was as tall as jade, as tall as pine, and as beautiful as a unique and unparalleled person. Although Lu Yuan may be a bit naive, he has a unique eye for people. Now, he has a good sense of his handsome future son-in-law, not only because he looks good, but also because of his clean and transparent eyes. Everything else can be deceitful. Whether his eyes are clean and clear is something he can't pretend to be. San Bo Nyang looked at Lu Yuan and stared at Xiaofeng Jiqing, then saw that comrade Xiaofeng's ears were already red. She said helplessly, "Sister-in-law, okay, comrade Xiaofeng is indeed good looking. You, as an elder, can't keep staring at him." For Lu Yuan, although San Bo Nyang looked down on her personality, she knew that she was innocent and had a lot of support for her. She only spoke directly to her, regardless of whether her words sounded good or not. "Third sister-in-law, I'm not familiar with comrade Xiaofeng either. Now that he's getting engaged to Lin soon, how can I handle it if I don't carefully check?" Lu Yuanli didn't care about the helpless tone of third uncle's mother. He looked at Feng Yingjie again with great courage before looking at third uncle's mother, and the tone naturally left third uncle's mother speechless. End of this chapter. Chapter 7. Direct Talk. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 7 Direct Talk. And after listening to her own mother's words, Li Lin lowered her head slightly and pursed her lips. If she liked someone who looked good, she would say that her mother's facial control problem may never be changed in her lifetime. Moreover, Li Lin suspected that if it weren't for her father being the most beautiful in the countryside, her mother might not have easily married her father. Perhaps even if they get married, they won't be so willing. According to Grandma Li Lin, Lu Yuan's problem with this good color is just left in the present. If we put aside the past situation, Lu Yuan's temperament may not be much different from that of a female playboy, and even eating, drinking, playing with actors may be just as common. San Bo Nyang looked at Lu Yuan with a straight and resolute face, shook her head in silence, and ignored her. She looked at Feng Yingjie with a smile on her face and said, "Comrade Xiaofeng, don't worry. Your aunt likes to look good. Let's get down to business. Today you saved our Miss Lin, and we all remember the kindness of saving our lives. Although the situation was special at that time, Comrade Xiaofeng has also been in our countryside for almost a year. I believe Comrade Xiaofeng is also aware of what this countryside is like. If it weren't for being forced to do so at that time, your third uncle and second grandfather wouldn't have let you and Miss Lin arrange a marriage." Looking at Feng Yingjie, who was listening attentively, San Wenyang sighed and continued, "Our rural girl's fate is low, and her reputation is extremely important. We are all grateful that you saved our girl Lin. There is no way we can settle your marriage with our girl. If you really don't want to, we won't force it, but can you help us? Just call me Xiaofeng or Yingjie, if you have anything to say." Feng Yingjie quietly glanced at Li Lin, who had been hanging his head silently across from him, and smiled at San Boyang sincerely. Upon hearing this, San Wenyang patted her thigh and exclaimed heartily, "Then I'll be frank. Let's just call you Yingjie. Comrade Xiaofeng is really quiet when he calls you Yingjie. Yingjie, if you don't want this marriage, you should still be engaged the day after tomorrow. But don't worry, although we rarely regret our marriage in the countryside, we treat it special. After the marriage was arranged, we found an opportunity to resolve the marriage within 3, 5, 6, or 7 months. Yingjie, you saved our daughter, and we couldn't force her to fall in love with you. What do you think? Of course, you can rest assured that it won't damage your reputation. Also, regardless of whether the marriage is successful or not, there is a shortage of teachers in the commune primary school. Your third uncle and second grandfather are all planning this matter, which can be considered as a reward for saving our daughter." Feng Yingjie hesitated for a moment before saying, "Auntie, you were too polite. The situation was urgent at the time, and I was very happy to save Li and Lin Lin. Although this marriage was rushed, what I was willing to do was that Auntie, and my family are all thousands of miles away and busy with work. I'm afraid they won't be able to come then. I hope Auntie doesn't mind." "Hi. What's up here? You don't have to come if you're busy, but I don't know if your family agrees to this marriage." San Boyang was simple and straightforward, but also had the caution of this rural person. When can this educated young man go back to the countryside? It's not certain whether he can go back or not. This mother-in-law's family is thousands of miles away, which is not perfect. Li Lin has been spoiled since childhood, and it's better not to have a mother-in-law on top of her after getting married. Besides, the whole team is watching Li Lin grow up and living in the team after getting married, so there's no need to be wronged. Feng Yingjie looked at the three aunties and Lu Yuan staring closely at him, his body slightly tense, and his voice slightly tense, saying, Auntie, don't worry, I will make my own decision about my marriage. This is what our grandfather said, but I am not very clear about the etiquette here. What is needed for engagement and marriage? Please let Auntie and Auntie clearly say that I am ready. Feng Jiqing, don't worry for now. I want to explain some things to you in advance. My aunt's words were also my intention before. Since you are willing, you also know the situation at home. My grandparents and father have all gone, and my mother is the only elder in the family. Although there are many uncles and brothers, I have to be my own daughter to support my mother, take care of her old age, and see her off. Upon hearing Feng Yingjie's words, Li Lin didn't care about anything else and directly looked up at Feng Yingjie across from her and said frankly, if you marry me, in our countryside, a son. In law with half a son, my mother will definitely follow me here. Even if you get married, it's the same. It's not about you being married or coming to your door. If you're willing, let's discuss getting engaged. If you don't want to, it's okay. The day after tomorrow, we will still get engaged as usual. After a year and a half, we can find an opportunity to terminate our engagement. You saved my life, and I can't rely on you to repay my kindness. Your kind actions are not an excuse for me to make progress, and my aunt's words are clear to you. Regardless of whether our engagement is successful or not, our Li family will do our best to plan and repay your life-saving kindness. I'm not very clear about your family's conditions, but I've heard of them before. They should be very good. Although we don't pay much attention to matching families nowadays, sometimes matching families is actually quite important. After all, getting married is not only about the two of us, but also about the two families. If your family doesn't agree, there's no need to force it. Faced with Li Lin's clear and transparent gaze, Feng Yingjie hesitated for a moment and quickly said, no, I didn't mean that. I agreed to the engagement, and I generally know some about your family's situation. Even if we get married and take care of our aunt, it's natural. As for my family, I will make my own decisions about my marriage and have nothing to do with them. Is it really not forced? Faced with Li Lin's skeptical gaze, Feng Yingjie shook his head somewhat helplessly and said, it's not forced. Although I'm not familiar with you, I've been in the team for almost a year now and have heard a lot about you. You're very good. Although there were some ups and downs in our marriage, it's still fate. Let's follow the normal etiquette. What do you think? Okay, you can do it if you don't force it. As for etiquette, everything should be simplified, and your centimeters are not too much. That's it. If there's anything unclear, ask my aunt. Li Lin looked at Feng Yingjie's firm gaze and didn't say anything else, just didn't want to be too troublesome. It's not that Li Lin doesn't value her marriage, but rather that these educated youth who go to the countryside, in addition to family subsidies, can support themselves by working in the brigade. The engagement is a bit hasty, and Li Lin is not the kind of person who values formalities. It's just that some etiquette should still be accepted, so as not to let others pay attention to Feng Yingjie behind his back. However, Li Lin thinks it's better to follow the crowd. Although most families want more dowry when getting married now, the bride almost has no dowry when leaving, which is impossible in Li Lin's family. Not to mention that Li Lin's family is now dependent on her and her mother, everything in the family will belong to Li Lin in the future. Even when Li Lin's father nursed them and they were still alive, it was impossible for them to treat Li Lin so harshly. Li Lin has never suffered any injustice in this regard. End of this chapter. Chapter 8. Discussion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 8 Discussion. Feng Yingjie glanced at San Wenyang and Lu Yuan, then at Li Lin, nodding hesitantly. It was because he was young and didn't understand these things. When he was at home before, he also heard people in the courtyard say that this marriage is a big deal in life, and how can we just handle it casually? However, judging from Li Lin's attitude, Feng Yingjie did not strongly oppose it. Just looking at her still somewhat pale face, she said softly, "You don't look very good yet. Why don't you go rest first? Let me talk to my aunt for a while." "Okay, then I'll go lie down for a while." Although Li Lin was feeling better, she still felt a bit uncomfortable and weak. She gave Feng Yingjie a determined glance, then nodded and stood up to greet her aunt and mother before returning to the room. Looking at her back, Feng Yingjie quietly breathed a sigh of relief. It must be said that Li Lin's appearance and steady demeanor made Feng Yingjie a bit nervous. He had heard about Li Lin's good looks before and had seen her before, but he was not familiar with her. Even if he met her, it was not easy to stare at other girls. In the morning, even the emergency responders didn't pay much attention. As they walked into the yard, they saw Li Lin standing at the entrance of the main room, and Feng Yingjie finally knew what kind of beauty the nearby people looked like. Li Lin looks like Lu Yuan, with a standard oval face, peach blossom eyes, a timid nose, and smiling lips. She is naturally cold and white-skinned, and even if she has been growing in the countryside, no matter how much she is exposed to the sun, she will not get dark. Regardless of the time, Li Lin's appearance is suitable for all ages to look good. Although she is not too tall, she is still over 1.6 meters tall. Since she has never suffered hardships and suffered injustice since childhood, Li Lin's figure is not that thin and weak, but slightly plump. Although her clothes are now bulky and not suitable, Li Lin's figure is graceful and curvaceous, with bright eyes, white teeth, willows, and a slender waist standing at the door. It is impossible to say that Feng Yingjie does not like her. When he was still in Beijing, Feng Yingjie had seen many girls from both the courtyard and the military cultural and artistic troupe. However, even Feng Yingjie had not seen many girls with outstanding looks like Li Lin. The admiration of young people is understandable, and now their situation is almost certain. Feng Yingjie still regards Li Lin as his own daughter. In law, and his upbringing from a young age has made him understand that many things must be done according to rules. Not following the rules always comes with a price, which is the engagement with Li Lin. Although it was hasty and Feng Yingjie didn't want to make do with it, the etiquette here was not very clear, so he carefully consulted third uncle Nyang and Lu Yuan. In terms of weddings, funerals, and weddings, there were more rules in the countryside than in the city. However, the marriage between Li Lin and Feng Yingjie cannot be arranged according to etiquette, so some details are omitted. The day after tomorrow, in the countryside, it is called Chuanqi, divided into Chuan Xiaoqi and Chuan Daqi. This engagement is called Chuan Daqi. San Guanyang also knew Lu Yuan's personality, so she said to Feng Yingjie, who patiently inquired, in the new society and new methods, we don't follow the old etiquette. The day after tomorrow, it is rumored that the bride will treat us to dinner, and you can bring the dowry with you. Your family is far away, so it's okay if you can't come. Just bring your friends with you. We don't pay much attention to this dowry, not because the girl is not valuable, but because Miss Lin is valuable. We don't pay attention to these things. You can handle them as you see fit. This rumor is not marriage, and now even if it's marriage, you know it's not that particular. But whether it's not particular or not, other families should have it. Miss Lin should also have it. After all, our daughter is not inferior to anyone. Feng Yingjie nodded and said, okay, Auntie, I understand. Auntie and Auntie at home don't have to worry. In the afternoon, I called my family at the commune and told them that I want to get engaged. My family is busy with work, but the dowry will be mailed. Auntie and Auntie, I won't hurt Lin Lin. Okay, as long as you have a chance, it's not too early now. You should go back and rest first. The days will grow in the future, and it will be convenient to come and go the day after. Sanbo Nyang nodded, very happy with Feng Yingjie's words. The family agreed to it, regardless of whether the marriage was decided by Feng Yingjie or not. If the family is unwilling to accept this marriage, it will still be Li Lin who will suffer in the future. Both Sanbo Nyang and Lu Yuan have a clear understanding of this matter. Although Li Aigua and Li Guoyang were almost half coerced to marry Feng Yingjie on the spot due to urgent matters this morning, if Feng Yingjie refused, neither Sanbo Nyang nor Lu Yuan would ultimately let Li Lin marry him. Feng Yingjie has always been a human sperm since he was young. How could he not be clear about the attitude of his third aunt and Lu Yuan? He just smiled and stood up to say goodbye. It's hard to say that his family is indeed in good condition, but their situation is not normal. To be honest, he is different from Lin, who was raised in the palm of his family since childhood. If it weren't for growing up with his grandfather or being abandoned now, it wouldn't have been his turn to go to the countryside with his family's conditions. Whether it's joining the military or going to college, his family actually has the ability to keep him in the city. But it's just my good father who wants his future, to show off his integrity, and my good mother who wants to please her father, her two brothers and sisters of different mothers, and suppress my biological son. With these thoughts in mind, Feng Yingjie's clear eyes flashed with a hint of darkness. This time, he suppressed and gave up, in exchange for his own freedom in the future. Although he was frustrated, he was able to exchange his freedom. However, his grandfather who raised him since childhood also gave up for the sake of family peace, which made Feng Yingjie quite uneasy. Feng Yingjie couldn't help but sneer coldly at his grandfather's words before leaving the capital. The so-called most beloved and favored ones were nothing more than that. However, no one could compete with him who should have belonged to him. Since his so-called relatives had given up on him, there was no need to maintain that layer of fig leaf in the future. After getting engaged and married to Lin, he will have his own home, loved ones, and children in the future. Those already severed family ties don't need to be maintained anymore, and from then on, he will have someone to care about and protect. No one knows what Feng Yingjie had thought about, but San Boyang and Lu Yuan nodded to each other, both in appearance and conduct. If it were anything else, Lin and Feng Yingjie were also a pair of good people. Moreover, Feng Yingjie's temperament was also gentle. In the future, when the two got married, the young couple would support and understand each other, which could be considered a good relationship. The two sister-in-law discussed the matter of engagement again. Lu Yuan noticed that it was getting late, so he let the third aunt go back. However, she sat alone in the yard for a long time. When she was in her teens, she left home and followed her wet nurse's mother-in-law's family to this remote countryside. The villagers were simple and could not imagine the intrigues of those wealthy families. But Lu Yuan grew up in these intrigues from a young age. Today, with just a few words from Feng Yingjie, Lu Yuan realized that although Feng Yingjie's family conditions were very good, their family situation was probably worrying, just not knowing how bad it would be. End of this chapter. Chapter 9. Storm. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 9. Storm. Lu Yuan stayed in the yard until the middle of the month before sighing and getting up to his daughter's room. He looked at Lin under the mosquito net in the dim moonlight, quietly stepped forward and lifted the mosquito net. He picked up a blanket and gently covered Lin's stomach, then put down the mosquito net before quietly leaving. That night, except for the kind-hearted Lin, neither Lu Yuan nor Feng Yingjie slept well. As soon as dawn broke, Feng Yingjie, who was a young educated person, got up to wash up. At this time, everyone got up very early. Feng Yingjie nodded at the young educated person beside him and left without paying attention to the faint whispers behind him. You didn't say that Feng Yingjie wouldn't really be engaged to that Lin, right? Anyway, Feng Yingjie saved her life yesterday and was just being held up like this. Lu Chuanjiao looked at Feng Yingjie's back and said with some sarcasm. The educated youth point courtyard is said to be a courtyard, but in fact, like the houses in the village, they are all 5 main rooms. The central hall is both a living room and a dining room. There are 5 female educated youth living in the east and 6 male educated youth living in the west. The east and west wing rooms have a kitchen, while the west wing room has 2 male and female bathrooms. The toilet is located in the southwest corner, and there is a pressure well in the courtyard. Nowadays, most of the 10 educated youth are gathered around a water well to wash their clothes. The words of the female educated youth, Lu Chuanjiao, have made everyone present look a lot ugly. The current environment makes people cautious in their words and actions. Lu Chuanjiao's mouth is open, and if the villagers hear her, they may cause trouble. In the village, these educated youth are not favored by the villagers, let alone the fact that almost everyone in the village is surnamed Li. The unity of this clan power has caused a lot of hardship for these newly educated youth who have just gone to the countryside. If Lu Chuanjiao's words were heard by the Li family in the village, it would be another annoyance. Besides yesterday's situation, they all know how important the reputation of rural girls is. They have been here for such a long time and they are also aware of it. Moreover, it was Feng Yingjie who personally agreed to this marriage yesterday, and there was no such thing as coercion. Besides, with Feng Yingjie's temperament, who can force him? Ma Fengxia sneered and stared at Lu Chuanjiao word by word, saying, "If you don't know how to speak, just shut up and don't implicate others." Feng Yingjie has been here for almost a year now. Although he doesn't know much about his temperament, he's not someone who can be manipulated. If he doesn't want to, no one can force him. Lu Chuanjiao, don't scrutinize others who are all blind. If you see Feng Yingjie, you also need to see if they can take notice of you. Yesterday, Feng Yingjie's hero saved the beauty, and the beauty promised each other by her own body. Their elders agreed, so you need to fight for justice here. Besides, did you see Feng Yingjie unwilling? Looking at Lu Chuanjiao's pale face, Ma Fengxia did not let her go. She continued, "I don't care what you think, but don't say anything more in the future, so as not to implicate the entire educated youth group. I don't care how deep your family background is. Here, in this courtyard, if you implicate others because of your open mouth and jealousy, I won't let you go." You. Qian Jianye looked at Lu Chuanjiao and interrupted her impatiently, "All right, Lu Chuanjiao, you've been here for over 2 years now. Because of your open mouth, how much has it affected our courtyard? If it continues like this, I will report your ideological consciousness to the Youth Education Office of the commune." "You can't do this." Listening to Lu Chuanjiao's screams, Qian Jianye said calmly, "I can. Lu Chuanjiao, you know, I can. I can't harm everyone's interests for you alone." Faced with all the disapproving and reproachful looks, Lu Chuanjiao felt a bit overwhelmed. She just casually complained, why did everyone frown at her? Faced with Lu Chuanjiao's resentful gaze, Qian Jianye furrowed his brows hard. With such a stubborn stick, if it weren't for the length of the educated youth, he would be too lazy to manage it. Qian Jianye has been in the countryside for 9 years since he was 6 or 5 years old. He was only 18 years old when he just reached adulthood, and now he is almost 20.7 years old and in his 30s. If he hadn't always believed in returning to the city, he would have collapsed long ago. He cannot let anyone be implicated in leaving any flaws in the archives. Over the years, he has worked diligently for the educated youth point, partly because he is the oldest and longest-serving educated youth in the countryside among all educated youth points. It is also because he wants to perform well and see if he can participate in the city's recruitment or be recommended to go to the workers, peasants and soldiers' university. If Qian Jianye hadn't done his best for the sake of returning to the city, he wouldn't have done his best for the sake of educated youth. Everyone else also said that just Lu Chuanjiao's sharp head would have given him a headache. A female educated youth in her 20s, what else could he do besides giving a verbal warning? The educated youth pointed out right and wrong, and Feng Yingjie, who was almost at the town commune, was not clear about it. Even if he knew it, he wouldn't get involved. As long as it didn't involve him, he wouldn't bother. First, he went to the post office and looked at the post office that had just opened the door to work. Feng Yingjie directly called his grandfather's office. After briefly mentioning the news of his engagement, Feng Yingjie stopped speaking and listened quietly to the words on the microphone. After a while, he gently replied, "Grandpa, it was already agreed before that I would go to the countryside. In exchange, I will have freedom in this life, including my marriage." I don't know what was said on the phone, but Feng Yingjie's expression became even colder. The sneer on his lips couldn't be stopped. He just let out a soft sigh and said, "Grandpa, you've said it too. I've been wise since I was young, and I know what's right and what's wrong in my heart. But no matter what, it's all for Grandpa's sake, just keep one eye open and one eye closed. Grandpa, a lot of things are lost when they are lost. Although the blood in my veins is the same, it's so cold that even if I want to cover it, I can't cover it anymore. Because Grandpa, I've conceded enough over the years, and now I've conceded to the countryside. What else do you want me to do? I'm already 20.1, Grandpa. How many people in the courtyard got married before 20? I'm now at the age of getting married, and I've moved away from the countryside. I only want to marry a virtuous girl and live a peaceful life. Even this is not acceptable. Perhaps it was Feng Yingjia's deep tone, or perhaps something else. In short, the meaning on the other end of the phone satisfied Feng Yingjie. Otherwise, he wouldn't have shown a knowing smile. However, at the end of the phone, Feng Yingjie's few words still made the old officer on the other end of the phone, who had once dominated the battlefield, hold his chest in regret. When I was young, I was obedient, showing filial piety to my parents and being obedient to my siblings. Although I never waited to be the child of the Feng family's love, the inheritance of my bloodline made me crave and hope for these family ties. It's just that time and time again, disappointment has made me no longer have expectations. Back then, everyone had their own last resort, and the end result was that I had to leave my hometown. Grandpa, I have already paid back what I should have. I don't want to go back to the city and interfere with their lives. I am doing well here. I will marry a virtuous wife, have a child with blood connections, and my grandchildren will also have their own homes. I won't beg for things that don't belong to me anymore. Isn't that good? End of this chapter. 10, Chapter 10 Preparation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 10 Preparation. Feng Yingjie, who hung up the phone, knew without thinking, what his grandfather would think and make what kind of decisions he would make. It was just something that belonged to him, and no one could snatch it. Thinking about the careful thinking of that family, Feng Yingjie couldn't help but laugh. He did give in, but it was him who belonged to him. If you want to forcibly snatch it from him, it depends on whether he is willing or not. The post office was not far from the supply and marketing cooperative, and strolled to it. Feng Yingjie bought a pair of watches and a radio with great money, looked at the ready-made clothes, and then thought about the rumors in the village. He came to the fabric counter, asked about the size required to make a piece of clothing, and directly took out enough fabric to buy Lin to make 2 sets of summer clothes and 2 sets of autumn clothes. He also bought some candies, 2 bottles of wine and 2 boxes of cigarettes after thinking about it, and finally bought pork and 2 chickens. With almost all the tickets and money on his body, Feng Yingjie left the supply and marketing agency with big bags and small bags of things. On the way back to the village, he realized that this supply and marketing cooperative was not where Lin works, but he didn't see Lin. He thought that Lin took a day off yesterday, not just for one day, but also because she had to get engaged tomorrow, so it's estimated that Lin will only go to work the day after tomorrow. He also took a 2-day leave with the captain early on. From a distance, he could see the educated youth courtyard at the village head. Feng Yingjie thought for a moment and went directly to the captain's house. Although there were not many farm jobs in the field now, most of them were male laborers working at home, while women usually stayed at home to tidy up the household and vegetable garden. At this time, the captain's wife, Li Guoyang, should be preparing lunch at home. Sure enough, as soon as she entered the yard, San Bon Yang came out of the stove and looked at Feng Yingjie, who was packed big and small. He was taken aback for a moment and then welcomed the person into the main room. Feng Yingjie knew San Bon Yang's temperament, so he didn't beat around the bush and was very straightforward. San Bon Yang, tomorrow's engagement. Although you are a member of my mother's family, you also know that I am not familiar with other aunts and aunties in the village. Could you please act as a matchmaker for a while? Then he took out a small bag of dim sum and candy from the bag and said with a smile, "Aunt San, this is a gift for media appreciation. Don't be disgusted." Okay, then tell me what you have prepared. Sanbo Nyang didn't refuse, smiled and nodded in agreement, then looked at the big and small bags on the table and asked directly. Feng Yingjie smiled a bit shyly and his eyes flickered as he said, I bought a watch for Lin Lin, a radio for Auntie, and some fabric. What else do I need? Auntie told me, I'll go to the supply and marketing cooperative again this afternoon. Sanbo Nyang and Feng Yingjie flipped through the things on the table together and thought for a moment, saying, you have prepared quite a few things. These fabrics can make several outfits, and watches and radios are both large items. However, you need to buy a pair of shoes for Miss Lin. This is our rule, and there is nothing else. As for how much dowry you will give, there is no exact amount. The few less are a few dozen yuan, and the many are 180 yuan. These are all discussions between the two families. As for tobacco and alcohol, if you don't have a father-in-law, you don't need to prepare for them. Sanbo Nyang looked at 2 bottles of wine and 2 boxes of cigarettes and said seriously. She knew that these educated youth were all from big cities, but some had more money, while others had less. She didn't expect Feng Yingjie to have such a big hand. Looking at the tobacco and alcohol on the table, Feng Yingjie smiled and said, Aunt, these tobacco and alcohol are not intended for engagement. They are for the secretary and team leader. I have to say that after the engagement tomorrow, I will also change my tone to call second grandpa and third uncle. Aunt also said that I don't have a father-in-law, and the elders in this family have second grandpa and third uncle in charge. You child, they are all flesh and blood of a family. With your courtesy, this is the first time. I will make it my own decision to accept them. I don't want to do this anymore. There's no need for a family to cheat, and it's not early now. I'll stay at home for lunch and call Miss Lin in the afternoon to take her to the supply and marketing agency to buy a pair of shoes. Watching Sanbo Nyang speak quickly, Feng Yingjie did not refuse. Under Sanbo Nyang's command, he put pork and 2 chickens in a basket, hung them with ropes, and placed them in the well in the yard. After all, it was so hot that these meat and chickens would turn bad tomorrow. The temperature in the well is low, so it's okay to keep it for a day and a night because Feng Yingjie is here. Third Uncle Nyang even specially cut a piece of preserved meat and stir-fried garlic sprouts with preserved meat, which can also be considered a meat dish. After all, at this time, even in rural households with good conditions, they only have to eat eggs and have no money or conditions to eat meat or fish. After lunch, Feng Yingjie arrived at Li Lin's house with dim sum and sweets. Just then, Li Lin's mother and daughter had just finished lunch. Seeing Feng Yingjie carrying something, they directly let him go to the hall. Feng Yingjie whispered what he had prepared, and then discussed with Lu Yuan how much the dowry would be. One of them didn't want to ask for more, and the other didn't want to make Li Lin feel wronged. Finally, Li Lin agreed, that's 99 yuan. It's a long and meaningful offer. Although 99 yuan is not a lot, it is not too much. After all, there are households in the Spring Festival Brigade who offer a betrothal gift of 168 yuan to the woman. Because the man works in the army and has allowances, the woman looks good after graduating from junior high school and is still the daughter of other team captains. For a while, due to such a high betrothal gift, she has gained a lot of attention in these 10 miles and 8 villages. Li Lin doesn't want to be high-profile, nor does she want to be too low-key. It's good to just be mediocre. Seeing Feng Yingjie still feeling a bit reluctant, Li Lin whispered, I know you don't want to hurt me, but this 99 yuan is not a small amount. Besides, there will be more places to use money in the future, and we don't need to make a difference in it. There's no need. Then buy a bicycle and a sewing machine. Nowadays, it's all about making 3 turns and 1 sound. Feng Yingjie didn't want to refute Li Lin, thinking for a moment before thinking about finding something else to make up for it. Li Lin glanced at her mother's satisfied expression, paused for a moment, and then said softly, let's just forget about the bicycle and sewing machine. I have a bicycle at home, and when you go to teach at the commune elementary school in the future, the two of us can ride a bicycle together. We also have a sewing machine at home. We only bought it last year, so there's no need to buy it again. By the way, have you ever thought about where we will live after getting married? Me, I haven't thought about it yet. So what do you and your aunt think? Feng Yingjie was stunned for a moment. He really hadn't thought about this question. From yesterday until now, although he made a hasty engagement, he only thought about tomorrow's engagement, and he really didn't have time to think about anything else. Li Lin looked at him carefully and said, although my house is not new, it has only been built for 5 or 6 years. My mother is the only one at home, with many houses and a large yard. Do you think it's okay for us to live at home when we get married? Of course, I'm just saying that. If you don't want to, let's think of something else. If you want to build a new house, then I'll discuss with my third uncle and them to see if we can plot the homestead closer to my house. What do you think? End of this chapter.